Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. But I'm going to rename this one my 10-minute giggle. I've already done a 10-minute laugh about Humza banning the Greens, so this one will be my 10-minute giggle. And the topic of my 10-minute giggle is Lorna Slater's reaction to the Greens being binned and papped out the government. Okay, so unless you live in the moon and you don't know what's happened this morning, SNP have called an end of the Butte Agreement, which allowed them to power share with the Greens, and have papped the Greens out and decided to govern in a minority government. And Lorna Slater didn't take much time to accuse Humza Yousaf of selling out future generations. And this is cracking, right? She said, "This is an act of political cowardice by the SNP, who are selling out future generations to appease the most reactionary forces in the country. Voters deserve better. Scotland deserves better. Scottish Green voters certainly deserve better. They have broken the bonds of trust with members of both parties who have twice chosen the cooperation agreement and climate action over chaos, culture wars and division. They have betrayed the electorate. And by ending the agreement in such a weak and thoroughly hopeless way, Humza Yousaf has signalled that when it comes to political cooperation, he can no longer be trusted." Oh, scary words. In just a few weeks' time, our own members were to have a democratic say on endorsing the cooperation agreement. We are confident they would have supported us in continuing our work for Scotland as they have done at every turn. Neither they nor SNP members will have that opportunity. Instead, the most reactionary and backward-looking forces within the First Minister's party have forced him to do the opposite of what he himself said was in Scotland's best interests. By contrast, we as co-leaders of the Scottish Greens were prepared to put our own political careers on the line with our members to defend our achievements in government, despite enduring all the SNP backbenchers and others threw against us. What a pity he didn't have the fortitude or the bravery to do the same. If they can't stand up to members of their own party, how can anyone expect them to stand up to the UK government at Westminster and defend the interests of Scotland? We demand a fairer, greener Scotland. We believe the Butte House Agreement would speed up the process, only to be let down by SNP time and time again. On council tax, on oil and gas, on 2030, and most obviously again today. You missed something out, Lorna. I'll come to the bit you missed out at the end. I appeal to those SNP members who do care about climate, trans rights, independence and our country to consider if they are in the right party for their values, or if their home should be with us as we prepare to step up our defence of the planet in opposition. Brave words. Finally, to all those who feel hurt and betrayed today, know this: our resolve is absolute. We will not abandon you as the SNP have. We will fight for your future with every breath we take. Okay. And a Scottish Green source said a council tax freeze was one surprise, waking up hearing you'll be booted from government is another. We've been sacked from government for having the gall to be democratic, unlike the SNP. This will always be a possibility. This was always a possibility, and our leaders naively spent a week talking about how ineffective Greens would be in opposition to save their own skin. How can Lorna, Patrick and indeed Ross, the negotiator and custodian and chief of the Butte House Agreement, continue as leaders of a party they have driven to humiliation, or as opposition MSPs in roles they think will yield few results? All three need to go. Wee-hee-hee! This is a quote from a Scottish Green source. All is not well. The other thing is, Patrick Harvey already said that if the Butte House Agreement was to be binned, he would step down as the co-leader of the Greens, which leaves the door open for Ross. I suppose he'll think he's a shoe-in for that. But it would appear, going by this Scottish Green source, they kind of had enough of his bollocks as well. So, the thing that was missing from her tirade, and I'll just find the section where she discusses. Here we go. She blames this downfall and break of trust on council tax, oil and gas, 2030, and most obviously today. What she fails to mention is what actually drove the Greens' response in the first place, and that was a movement by the Rainbow Greens who weren't happy with the way the Cass report review had been dealt with by Scotland. And they demanded a vote on the Butte House Agreement. That's what actually ignited this whole thing. And as I predicted last week, the Scottish Greens are trying to, and the SNP, are trying to ignore the fact. The fact is that the Scottish Government could possibly and highly probable be brought down soon because of an argument over giving kids puberty blockers. It's insane, isn't it? That is where Scottish politics is right now. And you'll need to excuse me, keep looking down. My phone's going nuts, obviously, because of the news that's come out today. But that's where Scottish politics is. If the Cass report hadn't suggested that it wasn't so good to give transgender children, or people, or kids who think they're transgender, puberty blockers, and the two NHSs in Scotland that put a temporary pause on issuing new prescriptions for these until more findings could be looked at. If that didn't happen, this whole thing wouldn't have snowballed to where we are today. That's how bonkers Scottish politics are. Scottish politics could see a government brought down by an argument on whether we should give puberty blockers to kids who think they are trans. This is a thing that's been defended by some politicians, which has got the effect on probably, I would suggest, less. If half of 1% of the population are trans, we need to consider how many of them are currently children and who are considering getting these drugs, because anybody who's on these drugs is still on them. They're not going to pull them off them. So this whole argument is about the kids who are currently in negotiations with health professionals that could have possibly led to them being put on puberty blockers. I would suggest that's probably a figure more than one, but less than 100. And this argument looks like it's going to bring down a government. And I'll put a wee link up here to what I'm talking about, because I've done one this morning about what happens next now that the SNP have decided to go alone in a minority government. And I think the likelihood is that they'll not be governed for long. But I've done a video this morning and I'll stick it up here. And the bizarreness is, it's over the head of a stupid argument about beta blockers. So Lorna Slater can go on all she likes about environment and all this nonsense, and the reality is she's lost her ministerial wages, so that's probably why she's a wee bit upset today. So the reality is, it's about an argument over probably a 2-digit amount of kids who might or may not get a drug that may or may not be safe for them. And the response to that is nuclear. Absolute nuts. I have wanted the downfall of the Scottish Government to happen for a long time. I have considered every option how to achieve that. I never thought it would be over an argument over a handful of kids. Genuinely. But it's a great day for those who want to see the end of the SNP government, because I genuinely believe that this is the start of the end for them. Okay, so if you like the video, give it a thumbs up. And as I say at the end of all my videos, the most important thing, unless you are the SNP party, their cult followers that remain in dwindling numbers, or any of the crackpot Scottish Greens who have just been horsed out their job. Everybody else, have a great day. Cheery bye now.